Hey everyone, this is the first section of Facing Reality uh, by CLR James and Grace Lee Boggs um, in collaboration with Cornelius Castoriadis. Here we go. The first section is titled Workers' Councils, Hungary. The secret of the Workers' Councils is this. From the very start of the Hungarian Revolution, these shop floor organizations of the workers demonstrated such conscious mastery of the needs, processes, and interrelations of production that they need not have to exercise any domination over people. That mastery is the only basis of political power against the bureaucratic state. It is the very essence of any government which is to be based upon general consent and not on force. The administration of things by the workers established a basic coherence in society. This administration of things by the workers' councils established a basic coherence in society. From this coherence they derived automatically their right to govern. Workers' management of production, government from below, and government by consent have thus been shown to be one and the same thing. The actual resort to arms has obscured the social transformation that took place in the first day of the revolution. Along with the fighting, the workers took over immediate control of the country. So complete was their mastery of production that large bodies of men dispersed over wide areas could exercise their control with the strategy of general deploying troops, and yet with the flexibility of a single craftsman guiding his tools. The decision to carry out a general strike was not decreed by any center. Simultaneously and spontaneously in all industrial areas of the country, the decision not to work was taken, and the strike organized itself immediately according to the objective needs of the revolutionary forces. On the initiative of the workers' councils in each plant, it was possible to come to a general decision, immediately acceptable to all, as to who should work and who should not work, where the goods produced should go and where they should not go. No central plan was needed. The plan was within each individual factory. General strikes have played a decisive role in bringing down governments in every modern revolution. But never before has the general been initiated and controlled so completely by the particular. It was not merely unity against the common enemy which made this cohesion possible. The strike, as well as the whole corpus of the revolution, demonstrated how deep were its roots in the mastery over production and social processes, which is the natural and acquired power of modern workers. I'm going to look up the Hungarian Revolution on Wikipedia, if you don't mind. Actually, I'm not going to do that. I lied. I'm not going to do that. New section, Production for Use. All great revolutions have obtained arms from soldiers who joined the revolution, and by taking them from the police and the arsenals of the state. In this, the Hungarian Revolution was no exception. The difference is that in Hungary, despite the fact that the whole army came over to the revolution, the workers' councils proceeded immediately to manufacture their own arms. The decision was immediately taken that these newly produced arms should be distributed to the striking workers in other industries who were to withdraw themselves into an army of defense. Production for use was for them not a theory but an automatic procedure from the moment they began to govern themselves. At a certain stage, the miners' councils decided to work in order to keep the mines from flooding. At another, they informed the Kadar government precisely how much they would produce in exchange for precise political concessions. János Kadar lived from 1912 to 1989. János Kadar was a Hungarian communist leader and the general secretary of the Hungarian Socialist Workers' Party, a position Kadar held for 32 years. Declining health led to Kadar's retirement in 1988, and Kadar died in 1989 after being hospitalized for pneumonia. Kadar was born in Fiume. I'm not sure where that is. I think that's on like the border of Italy and Hungary. I'm not sure. Or Italy and Austria. I'm not sure. Kadar was born in Fiume in poverty, or Fiume, I'm not sure how to say it, in poverty to a single mother. After living in the countryside for some years, Kadar and his mother moved to Budapest. Kadar joined the Party of Communists in Hungary's youth organization, KIMSZ, and went on to become a prominent figure in the pre-1939 Communist Party, eventually becoming first secretary. As a leader, he would dissolve the party and reorganize it as the Peace Party, but the new party failed to win much popular support. After World War II, with Soviet support, the Communist Party took power in Hungary. Kadar rose through the party ranks, serving as interior minister from 1948 to 1950. In 1951, he was imprisoned by the government of Matthias Rákosi, but was released in 1954 by reformist Prime Minister Imre Nagy. I don't know how you say that. Imrenagy. I've heard people say Imre Nagy. I'm not sure. On the 25th of October 1956, during the Hungarian Revolution, Kadar replaced Erno Gero as general secretary of the party, taking part in Nagy's revolutionary government. I'm going to say Nagy. A week later, Kadar broke with Nagy over his decision to withdraw from the Warsaw Pact. After Soviet intervention in Hungary, Kadar was selected to lead the country. He ordered Nagy to be executed shortly after coming to power. Kadar gradually moderated, releasing the majority of remaining prisoners of this period in an amnesty in 1963. Citation needed. Kadar's leadership was characterized by unrelenting realpolitik. For a long time, he successfully maneuvered between Moscow's wishes, local interest, and the expectations of the Western world. In an interview with the Western journalist, he called himself a, quote, toiler for compromise, end quote. Kadar was succeeded by Karoly Grosz as General Secretary on the 22nd of May, 1988. Grosz would only serve a year in this post due to the fall of communism in Europe in 1989. During his time as leader of Hungary, Kadar pushed for an improvement in standards of living. Kadar increased international trade with non-communist countries, in particular those of Western Europe. Kadar's policies differed from those of other communist leaders such as Nicolae Ceausescu, Enver Hoxha, and Wojciech Jaruzelski, all who favored more orthodox interpretations of Marxism-Leninism. Kadar's reformist policies and the increasing commercial ties to the Western world would in turn worsen relations with Leonid Brezhnev in the Soviet Union. As the leader of Hungary, Kadar attempted to liberalize the Hungarian economy with a greater focus on consumer goods in what would become known as goulash communism. Back to the text. At another council, they informed the Kadar government precisely how much they would produce in exchange for precise political concessions. At the same time, they opened out to all a vision of the future by stating boldly and confidently that once all their political demands were realized, they would produce at a rate that would astonish the world. Thus they established that the secret of higher productivity is self-government in production. Previous revolutions have concentrated on the seizure of political power and only afterwards faced the problem of organizing production according to new procedures and methods. The great lesson of the years 1923 to 1956 has been this, that degradation in production relations results in the degradation of political relations, from there to the degradation of all relations in society. The Hungarian Revolution has reversed this process. As a result of the stage reached by modern industry and its experience under the bureaucratic leadership of the party and its plan, capital P party, capital P plan in that sentence, the revolution from the very beginning seized power in the process of production and from there organized the political power. The workers' councils did not look to governments to carry out their demands. In the Hungarian Revolution, the workers' councils not only released the political prisoners, as in all revolutions, the workers' councils immediately rehired them at their old plants without loss of pay. Even while they were demanding that the government abolish the system of norms and quotas, they were themselves establishing how much work should be done and by whom, in accordance with what was needed. They demanded increases in wages, but they assumed the responsibility not only for paying wages, but for increasing wages by 10%. From the moment that they took the apparatus of industry under their control, they began to tear off the veils which hid the essential simplicity of the modern economy. New section. Government by the people. The parties, the administrators, and the planners have claimed always that without them society will collapse into anarchy and chaos. The Workers' Councils recognized the need for an official center and for a head of state. Early in the revolution, because they believed Naj to have the confidence of the people, they proposed that he assume the national leadership. Let me see.
Nagy Imre.
Sorry, I'm just seeing to see if I can find.
Nagy.
Nod? Fucking what?
Nagy.
I'm gonna say Naj. Okay, I'm just gonna go with that. Imre Nagy lived from 1896 to 1958. Imre Nagy was a Hungarian communist politician who served as chairman of the Council of Ministers, de facto prime minister of the Hungarian People's Republic from 1953 to 1955. In 1956, Nagy became leader of the Hungarian Revolution of 1956 against the Soviet-backed government, for which Nagy was sentenced to death and executed 2 years later. Nagy was not related to previous agrarianist Prime Minister Ferenc Nagy. Born to a peasant family, Imre Nagy was apprenticed as a locksmith before being drafted in World War II. Imre Nagy was a committed communist from soon after the Russian Revolution, and through the 1920s he engaged in underground party activity in Hungary. Living in the Soviet Union from 1930, he served the Soviet NKVD secret police as an informer from 1933 to 1941. Nagy returned to Hungary shortly before the end of World War II and served in various offices of the Hungarian Working People's Party, MDP, took control of Hungary in the late 1940s, and the country entered the Soviet sphere of influence. In 1944 and 1945, Nagy was Hungary's Minister of Agriculture, where Nagy carried out land divisions that won Nagy widespread popularity among the peasantry. Nagy served as Interior Minister of Hungary from 1945 to 1946. Nagy became Prime Minister in 1953 and attempted to relax some of the harshest aspects of Matyas Rákosi's Stalinist regime, but was subverted and eventually forced out of the government in 1955 by Rákosi's continuing influence as General Secretary of the MDP. Nagy remained popular with writers, intellectuals, and the common people who saw him as an icon of reform against the hardline elements in the Soviet-backed regime. The outbreak of the Hungarian Revolution on the 23rd of October 1956 saw Nagy elevated to the position of Prime Minister on the 24th of October as a central demand of the revolutionaries and common people. Nagy's reformist faction gained full control of the government, admitted non-communist politicians, dissolved the AVH secret police, promised democratic reforms, and unilaterally withdrew Hungary from the Warsaw Pact on the 1st of November. The Soviet Union launched a massive military invasion of Hungary on the 4th of November, forcibly deposing Nagy, who fled to the embassy of Yugoslavia in Budapest. Nagy was lured out of the embassy under false promises on the 22nd of November and was arrested and deported to Romania. On the 16th of June 1958, Nagy was tried and executed for treason alongside his closest allies, and his body was buried in an unmarked grave. In June 1989, Nagy and other prominent figures of the 1956 revolution were rehabilitated and buried with full honors, an event that played a key role in the collapse of the Hungarian Socialist Workers' Party regime. Back to the text. Early in the revolution, because they believed Nagy to have the confidence of the people, they proposed that Nagy assume the national leadership. But the councils finished once and for all with the delegation of powers to a center while the population retreats into passive obedience. Thus, the workers' councils and the Naj government were not a dual power in the classical sense of that phrase. The Naj government proposed to legalize the revolutionary councils by incorporating them into the existing administration. The workers' councils made it clear in reply that they were the legal administration and that the power to legalize, incorporate, indeed disestablish an official center rested with them. They drew no distinction between the work of production and the work of government. They decided who should occupy government posts, who should be dismissed, which ministries should be retained, which should be dissolved. Everyone knows that the revolution attacked without mercy the infamous Stalinist secret police. But people have not concerned themselves with the far more important judicial actions of the workers' councils. The secret police in Hungary are called the State Protection Authority, the AVH. The State Protection Authority was the secret police of the People's Republic of Hungary from 1945 to 1956. The State Protection Authority was conceived as an external appendage of the Soviet Union's KGB in Hungary, responsible for supporting the ruling Hungarian Working People's Party and persecuting political criminals. The State Protection Authority gained a reputation for brutality during a series of purges, but was gradually reined in under the government of Imre Nagy, a moderate reformer, after he was appointed Prime Minister of Hungary in 1953. The State Protection Authority was dissolved by Nagy's revolutionary government during the Hungarian Revolution of 1956 and succeeded by the Ministry of Internal Affairs 3. Archive data related to the State Protection Authority and the Ministry of Internal Affairs 3 are made available through the historical archives of the Hungarian State Security. Back to the text. It is tradition with revolutions to place on trial those members of the old regime whom popular opinion holds most responsible for its crimes. In the last 25 years, however, the trials of political enemies and vengeance against them have become inseparable in the public mind from the brutalities of the totalitarian and imperialistic states. Conscious that they represented a new social order and never forgetting, in their own words, why they were fighting, the Hungarian revolutionaries renounced terror and vengeance. Characteristically, they carried out their judicial functions within the framework of the plant itself. The councils constituted themselves into courts to discuss, one by one, the directors of the plant, the trade union officials, and the party officials to decide which should be expelled from the plant and which allowed to remain. They dissolved and destroyed the records of the personnel departments, which had become, as in plants the world over, centers of blacklisting and spying. New section, the end of the political party. One of the great achievements of the Hungarian Revolution was to destroy once and for all the legend that the working class cannot act successfully except under the leadership of a political party. It did all that it did precisely because it was not under the leadership of a political party. If a political party had existed to lead the revolution, that political party would have led the revolution to disaster, as it has led every revolution to disaster during the last 30 years. There was leadership on all sides, but there was no party leading it. No party in the world would have dared to lead the country into a counterattack in the face of thousands of Russian tanks. Nothing but an organization in close contact with the working class population in the factory, and which therefore knew and felt the strength of the population at every stage, could have dared to begin the battle a second time. Still later, after the military battle had been lost, no organization except workers' councils would have dared to start a general strike and carry it on for 5 weeks, unquestionably the most astonishing event in the whole history of revolutionary struggles. In these unprecedented examples of leadership of the workers' councils, put an end to the foolish dreams, disasters, and despair which have attended all those who since 1923 have placed the hope for socialism in the elite party, whether communist or social democrat. The political party, as such, whatever type it is, constitutes essentially a separation of the organizing intellectuals and workers with an instinct for leadership from the masses as force and motive power. As long as the real centers of administration were the private capitalists in their various spheres, the apparatus of government was relatively simple. Political parties as such could represent the opposing classes, and in their conflicts with one another and their bids for popular support clarify the choices before society and educate the population as a whole. But with the growth of large-scale production, the state apparatus controls the national economy in fact, and whichever party comes to power inherits and becomes the agent of an existing apparatus. Control over production means first and foremost control over the workers, and the modern state can function only if the decisive trade unions are incorporated into it or are powerful at critical moments to submit to it. The powerful labor organizations, therefore, by their very existence, must suppress those creative energies which the reconstitution of society demands from the mass of the people. The workers' councils in Hungary instructed the workers to put aside party affiliations and elect their delegates according to their judgment of them as workers in the plant. At the same time, no worker was discriminated against either in his work or in his election to the workers' councils because of his party affiliation. The traditional political parties take their political differences into the factories, breaking the unity of the workers according to these divisions. They make of individual workers representatives of a political line, corrupting relations between people by transforming them into relations of political rivalry. Once the powers of government were with the shop floor organizations, the objective relations of the labor process provided all the discipline required. On the basis of that objective discipline, the widest variety of views and idiosyncrasies could not only be tolerated but welcomed. So confident were the workers' councils that the workers' mastery over production would be decisive in the solution of all important questions, that they proposed a great party of the revolution. This was to include all who had taken part in the revolution, the clerical and petty bourgeois right, former members of the small proprietors' party, social democrats, and communists. Before these and other proposals could be worked out and tried, the Russian tanks suppressed the revolution. Once the Hungarian people erupted spontaneously, the rest followed with an organic necessity and a completeness of self-organization that distinguishes this revolution from all previous revolutions, and marks it as specifically a revolution of the middle of the 20th century. So obviously were the workers' councils the natural and logical alternative to the totalitarian state, that the traditional demand for a constituent assembly or convention to create a new form of government was not even raised. So deep is the consciousness in modern people that organization of production is the basis of society, that the whole population mobilized itself around the workers' councils as the natural government. It is not excluded that in their search for ways and means to organize a new state, political parties might have been formed, but with the state founded on workers' councils, no political parties could assume the powers, suppress the people, or make the mischief that we have seen from them in the last 30 years, or make the mischief that we have seen from all of them in the last 30 years. New section, Workers and Intelligentsia. Capitalism has created and steadily deepened the gulf between workers and the intelligentsia, technicians and intellectuals. These have been incorporated by capitalism into the directing apparatus of industry and the state. There they administer and discipline the working population. The Hungarian workers, conscious that technicians are part of the labor process, gave to technicians and intellectuals their place on the workers' councils. The majority of the councils were fittingly production workers, who constitute the majority in the plant itself. But in these all-inclusive workers' councils, the technician could be functionally related to the activities, the technician could be functionally related to the activities and attitudes of the plant community, instead of being isolated from the mass of the people, as he is on both sides of the Iron Curtain today. In previous revolutions, particularly the Russian, it was necessary to state and restate and underline the power of the working class. The very emphasis testified to the weakness of the proletariat in the social structure of the nation. The modern world has understood, after 3 decades of bitter experience, that the socialist revolution is a national revolution. Recognized at home and abroad as the leader of the nation, the Hungarian workers called for the establishment of, quote, workers' councils in every branch of all of the national activity, end quote. Thus, not only white-collar workers in offices, but all government employees, including the police, should have their own councils. The Hungarian intellectuals heroically defied Stalinism, yet even after the revolution began, all that they could demand was the democratization of the party and the government, freedom of speech, honesty in placing the economic situation before the people, knowledge and power, etc. Within a week they had come to the conclusion that the Workers' Council should form the government of the country with Zoltán Kodály, the composer, as president because of his great national and international reputation. According to Wikipedia, Zoltán Kodály lived from 1882 to 1967 and was a Hungarian composer, ethnomusicologist, music pedagogue, linguist, and philosopher. Zoltán Kodály is well known internationally as the creator of the Kodály method of music education. Back to the text. It was the Hungarian workers and not they who showed the form of the new society. New section. The farmers and the workers. The Hungarian peasants showed how far society has progressed in the last 30 years. The peasants broke up the collective farms, which are in reality factories in the field, owned and run by the state, the party, and the plan. But at the same time, they immediately organized themselves to establish contact with the workers and others in towns on the basis of social need. They organized their trucks to take them food, did not wait to be paid, but went back to the countryside to bring in new loads, risking their lives to do so. One second. So confident were they that the only power against the totalitarian state was the workers, that the peasants did not wait to see if the workers would guarantee them the land before committing themselves to the active support of the workers' councils. What revolutionary governments have usually striven in vain to win, the confidence of the peasants, was here achieved in reverse. The peasants took all risks in order to show his confidence in the worker. These objectively developed relations of cooperation have now passed into the subjective personality of people, their instinctive responses, and the way they act. Released from the fear that art and literature must serve only politics, sensing all around them the expansion of human needs, human capacities, and cooperation, the Hungarian people created 25 new newspapers overnight. The older artists and the younger talents pouring out news, articles, stories, and poems in a flood tide of artistic energy. New section. Workers and Foreign Affairs. The Hungarian Workers' Councils not only made appeals to the Russian troops to cease fire and to go home, they entered into negotiations and made direct arrangements with Russian commanders to retire. At least one council not only negotiated the removal of a garrison of Russian troops, but arranged for it to be supplied with food. This was not just fraternization. It was the assumption of responsibility by the workers' councils for foreign affairs. The simplicity with which the negotiations were carried out reflects the education which the post-war world has received in the futile bickering and cynical propagandizing of ceasefire conferences in Korea, Big Four meetings in London and Paris, and Big Two meetings in Geneva. Russian troops mutinied and deserted to fight under the command of the Hungarian councils. When the hospital at Debrecen radioed its need for iron lungs, the Workers' Council at Miskolc undertook to get these from West Germany, and by radio organized the landing of the lung-bearing plane at the Debrecen airport. The Hungarian Revolution transcended that combination of threats, snarls, lies, hypocrisy, and brutality which today appear under the headlines of foreign affairs. The Hungarian people welcomed such medical aid and supplies as they received from abroad, but as they explained to their Czech brothers, it was not assistance or charity which they needed, as much as understanding by the world that they fought not only for themselves but for Europe. To a world which is constantly being offered bribes of economic aid and promises of a higher standard of living, these words rang with a new morality. The Hungarian people were not begging for handouts from the Romanian, Serb, or Slovak workers. They wanted them to join in the common struggle for a new society. The neutrality which the Hungarian people demanded was not the neutrality of a Switzerland. The revolution had in fact begun by a mass demonstration of solidarity with the Poles. They did not want the country to be the battleground of the struggle between America and Russia for mastery of the world, but they themselves were prepared to lay down their lives in the struggle to build a new society side by side with the other peoples of Europe on both east and west. The urgent appeals for arms in the final days of the military battle, the voices fading from the radio with cries for help, must be seen against the awareness by the Hungarian population that they were in the forefront of a world movement to build a new civilization, as profoundly different from American materialism as from Russian totalitarianism. Such confidence in the ideals and aims by which men live can come in the modern world only from a material foundation. The material foundation of the Hungarian workers was their natural and acquired capacity to organize production, and their experience of the centralized plan and the whole bureaucratic organization which has reached its ultimate in the one-party state which is characteristic of modern society the world over. Helpless before this new civilization, so weak in logistics but so powerful in appeal to the peoples of the world, aware that it is just below the surface in all Europe and is ready to destroy both American and Russian imperialism, the Western powers hesitated for a moment and then turned their vast propaganda machine to one single aim, to transform the content of the Hungarian Revolution into a problem of refugees, the poor, the needy, the supplicating, the weak and helpless. These the American welfare state can deal with by charity and red tape. Thus, as in the East, Russia applied herself to the systematic destruction of the workers' councils by deportation to labor camps. The American government in the West began the breakup by organizing refugee camps. The Hungarian people have not been deceived by this characteristic American maneuver. The failure of the Hungarian Revolution they have placed squarely at the door of both the Russian and the American governments. New section. The victory was complete. The complete withdrawal of the Russian troops from all Hungary was on the surface a national demand, but in reality, that is, in the concrete circumstances, the whole population realized that the Russian tanks were the only force inside the country able to crush the workers' councils. To speak of a civil war between the right and left in Hungary once the Russian troops had left, in the classical style of national revolutions, is to misunderstand completely the stage to which the mastery of production by the workers has reached in modern society, and the understanding of this by the whole population. In the Hungarian Revolution, there was no divorce between immediate objectives and ultimate aims, between instinctive action and conscious purpose. Working, thinking, fighting, bleeding Hungary never for a moment forgot that it was incubating a new society, not only for Hungary but for all mankind. In the midst of the organization of battle, the workers' councils organized political discussions not only of the position of the particular plant in relation to the total struggle, but of the aims which the councils should achieve. They carried on incessant political activity to root out the political and organizational remnants of the old regime and work out new politics. They knew that the danger to the workers' councils lay not in the middle classes outside the factory, but from the state, the Communist Party, and the trade union bureaucrats, all trying to remove the power from the shop floor. At the very beginning of the revolution, the Gero government recognizing that the party and the unions had collapsed, called upon the party cadres in the plants to form councils and mobilize the councils against the revolutionary population in the streets. According to Wikipedia, Erno Gero lived from 1898 to 1980. Erno Gero was a Hungarian communist leader in the period after World War II, and briefly in 1956 the most powerful man in Hungary as the leader of its ruling Communist Party. At the very beginning of the revolution, the Gero government, recognizing that the party and the unions had collapsed, called upon the party cadres in the plants to form councils and mobilize the councils against the revolutionary population in the streets. The workers in the streets returned to the factories, threw out the party cadres, and re-elected their own councils on the shop floor. Then they issued the announcement, quote, "We have been elected by the workers and not by the government," end quote. Was the most fossilized and bureaucratic of all the organizations which made up the Stalinist system. Fuck. I think there's a misprint here. There's a fucking page missing. God damn it. Well, I guess we'll just have to live without that. They issued the announcement, "We have been elected by the workers, not by the government," end quote. I'm going to see if I can actually find this. Well, unfortunately, folks, I have investigated the matter, and I cannot find a PDF that does not have this series of pages missing. So, the next section is titled "The Workers Take Over." But it was not a question merely of getting rid of Stalinist bureaucrats, labor bureaucrats, and their persecution of the ranks. The economic life of the country had to go on, and the workers' councils proceeded to assume responsibility for this by completely discarding the state plan except as a general guide, and themselves carrying out the negotiations from factory to factory. While Khrushchev turns the Russian economy upside down in a desperate search for means to make it viable, and theoretical men of goodwill break their heads in the search for plan without bureaucracy, the Polish workers simply took over the plants where they had worked all their lives. That always will be the only way to organize a national economy. It was such councils of Polish workers which organized the Poznan revolt. It was these same workers' councils which mobilized themselves in the plants over the October 19th weekend and stood ready with arms in hand to support Gomulka and the Central Committee of the Polish Party in their defiance of Khrushchev. The Russians retreated. Gomulka is in power. All visitors report absence of fear among the Polish people, the lively discussions going on, and the readiness on the part of all to discuss freely with foreigners. That all this exists is due to the power which the workers' councils exercise inside the plant. The central problem, however, remains. How is the economy reduced to such chaos by the party and the plan to be put on its feet again? Gomulka faces the insoluble problem which will lead inevitably either to the instituting of a government of workers' councils or once more to a plain and open domination by Russia. With all the goodwill in the world and despite the dismissal of bureaucrats, Poland remains a country run by the party, but this time without any plan, and the plan is inseparable from the elite party. Notice it's important to note that when they're saying plan, it's in capital P, with a capital P, and when they say party, it's with a capital P. That is how the contemporary Polish state was built, and slowly the whole bureaucratic formation is reasserting itself. Gomulka stands halfway, with a working class in action in many spheres, but above it a bureaucracy which is recovering that bureaucracy's strength and is determined to reassert itself, whether under Gomulka or any other leader. This is of extreme importance, for the Polish Communist Party, under the pressure of the people and the workers, did try to reform itself. It failed as all reforms of totalitarian states are bound to fail. That is the Poland of Gomulka today. Back to Stalinism or forward to the revolution of the Polish workers for socialism. That is to say, the government of workers' councils. There are some, and they even call themselves Marxists, who admit the creative power of the Hungarian Revolution, but prophesize for it failure and degeneration, even if it had not been crushed by Russian tanks. The road that Poland is traveling so rapidly should instruct them that it is the half-hearted attack on the party and the plan which produces degeneration. Their total destruction is the only guarantee of a future. Workers' councils in every department of the national activity, of government of workers' councils, are not ends in themselves. They are means to an end. They will result in one procedure in one country and other procedures in other countries. They neither automatically reject nor automatically include democratic elections on a territorial or industrial basis, or both combined, or each for a period of trial. They would be one thing in Hungary, something else in the United States, and something else again in Britain or Japan, but under all circumstances they would be the political form in which the great masses of the people would be able to bring their energies to fulfill their destiny, in accordance with their economic structure, their past history, and their consciousness of themselves. That's the end of the chapter. I'm sorry for the missing pages.